Shouldn't
Yes, Frank.
Good day, PT. Shouldn't
Yes,
really
yes.
good to see you again. And anytime that we get to hear your words of wisdom, it is such a gift, and really happy to be here with you. So today, if we can hear, if you can enlighten us upon the words cult and culture, because they are in a way, cult is really like a trigger word, and it's so charged around the concept and the perception of it. So if you could just share and clarify what it really means and how it's been proposed to us.
Okay, okay, Frank. The thing is that most people actually do not understand that the root of the word cult is culture. Okay,
Yeah,
this is not like common information.
right,
Okay. In the West, that they have made this word cult a big word. Okay. Funnily, they haven't made the word culture such a big word. Okay.
right.
Okay, but if you take the word culture and take URE out of it, then you are left with
There it is.
ULT. Okay, right? Like so,
Yeah,
it is very clear, like where the root of this word is.
right,
Now, what could be the basic premise of making this word, or why would someone want to create this word? Okay,
right.
because then it comes to that thing that they are definitely afraid of culture. Some beings or some people who are afraid of culture, like real
Right.
culture.
Yeah.
So, if you are running a thing called society or mainstream society, okay, and it lacks culture,
Hmm.
and you are afraid that from some other place, some culture might come there,
Uh-huh.
okay, then you would design a word which takes out the word culture because culture is a good thing, right?
Yeah,
Culture has positive connotations, right?
definitely.
It doesn't have negative connotations, that term, okay?
Mhm.
Like culture means something enriching, something more, something useful, something, you
Right.
know, evolving. Now, so you cut that word down in half. And so any culture which will come, you would brand it as cult.
Right.
So, which you give a very negative connotation to.
Hmm.
You yourself create a few examples of groups who are outside of society. You create those groups, make them look mad, and create them in that way, create a public perception in that way. So that all the masses then get a feeling that only in mainstream everything is the same. Anything outside of that is all crazy and mad.
Uh-huh. What a game.
Yeah, okay. So that's how this big word, like, because whenever people, that's what has happened in the West now. Whenever people don't understand something or it's new for them, and any group forms, it's called a cult, branded, labeled a cult in the West.
Right.
If you can't put your finger on something, oh, must be a cult. Okay, that
Right.
has become the norm, right?
Hmm.
You know, and it was created so because, for example, if there is a place where everyone is eating meat, and everybody, that's the society and that's normal. Okay, so that's the cult of
Right.
that kind of diet, right? Now, if someone comes up from outside with a vegetarian diet or some other kind of diet, then some people start following that. Then those people call that a cult,
Yeah. Right.
okay, because they don't do as we do.
Right.
Not culture, that there might be some culture in it
Yeah.
to eat this kind of diet,
Right.
or right. I'm
Exactly.
just giving an example, a practical example, so people can understand. Like, because food is a very practical thing,
Right.
which every human being mostly eats. So,
Right.
and it has to do with culture, what your ancestors know, how to eat and what to eat, you know. So,
And it's like how there's such a lack of culture in certain places. Things have come up like fast food culture. Fast food is
yeah,
culture now, like in the West, and it's
yeah.
unfortunately.
But it's actually a cult. But they
Yeah.
will never call that a cult.
Right.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, they will never call. So, first, I was just saying why this word even needed to be formed. This term needed to be formed because some people are very scared of culture, real culture
Right.
coming in, right?
Mhm.
That's why, I mean, otherwise, what's the need for this cutting culture in half and making this
Right.
strange term to scare people with?
Yeah.
Okay, so that none of the sheep or none of the masses get out of the boundaries they've set up for them,
Right.
which is called the mainstream, or you know,
Yeah.
or the system.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
system.
it's like the system is pointing its finger everywhere. Look, you don't want to be like this, but they're not showing that
Yeah,
from perception you are in their cult. So
yeah,
you can't see that you're in it.
yeah. You end it, and that's all okay.
Right.
Everything might be going to so bad in that within the system.
Right.
Everybody might be suffering, but there's no problem with that.
Right.
Yeah, no problem at all. People's diseases might be rising, people's mental condition might be getting worse.
Right.
Every negative kind of thing possible is happening, and then wars on top of it,
Right.
and 100,000 other things.
Mhm.
But that's all okay. That's not a cult. That's okay.
Because they have professionals to help. We have our psychologists and our
Yeah, yeah,
doctors and everything.
yeah. Help make that matters worse. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah. So I mean, so this is a very like thought out thing to create this hoo-ha about this word
Right.
and create this kind of fear about this so that people are afraid to step out into any kind of group. Because when people step out, one individual will step out, then two, then three, then four, and five, six, and then finally that's called a group.
Right.
And a group is formed, you know.
Yeah.
And group always has more influence and more power than just one person,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And then group can attract more people
Right.
into it. So to stop that from happening, independent groups being formed of any kind, this term was made up.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. I feel like there's, you know, different examples that we've been given as to, want to shy away from anything that's considered cultish. But one that
Yes,
really stands out is the Heaven's Gate from
yes, yes,
America, like whatever it was when the Hale-Bopp comet was coming through, and then it was a mass
yes,
suicide, and they were all wearing,
yes,
purple
yes, yes,
Nikes and everything.
yes, 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 yes. Yeah, something very. It has to be more mad and crazy
Right.
than that thing. Even though uh, people die all the time in the name of war and suicides are
Right.
happening in normal society always all the time. Mental hospitals are filled with people with mental conditions of all kinds. You
Right.
know, but that's all okay. You know,
Yeah.
you know. Let's highlight something which we ourselves create. You know,
Right.
you know, like a lot of those things and fundings are coming from sources which, like, we won't go into it out here, but like,
Right.
I'm just gonna drop the hint. Okay. So, uh, so the whole thing is that whenever culture comes in any actual form, which can actually help people change their lifestyle for the better, which is culture, you
Right.
know, it is labeled as cult so as to dissuade people away from it.
Right.
You know, they say, oh, cults have own rules. Okay, rules.
Mhm.
Society has its own rules too. Mainstream has so many rules. You know,
Yeah.
what about that? You know,
Exactly.
that way, any group in any human history, wherever groups are formed, any group will have to have some format
Hmm.
or some sort of specification and some sort of qualification or some sort of direction. All of these things will automatically be there. That's just the nature of group itself.
Yeah. Right.
That's the nature of a group. Just like there's the nature of individual, there's the nature of group, which is there in nature. You know,
Yeah.
but everything which applies to a group, it can be a leader in a group. There's leaders automatically happen. Leaders is a natural thing in
Hmm.
nature.
Yeah. Right.
But all of the considered like things are considered very wrong, somehow unnatural.
Yeah.
When in their cult, leaders are there, they're CEOs, politicians, that things, and all kinds of leaders. That's all okay.
Right.
But no group can have a leader. Like, how is it?
Right.
Yeah, we can do it, but you can't. Like being a centering, and all of that, and doing better for themselves, or you know, evolving themselves. Then that is cultish. If beings are in any kind of bad posture and going to McDonald's, gym thing, eating crap, then that's not a cult of any kind. That's all good Samaritan stuff. You know, you know,
I
so
know it's
yeah,
and it's like you hear people say, if you are whatever in something like what they would consider cultish. The general idea is like you think of someone who just kind of has a glazed over look in their eyes. You,
yeah,
they don't think for themselves, but in reality, like they're not thinking about the choices that are keeping them held down so low and in pain,
yeah.
and all those things that are.
The glazed over look, yes, because that glazed over look is a very nice thing you mentioned because that's what people have in cubicles when they're working in all these big corporate buildings. Like,
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's the most glazed over look there is.
Yeah,
I mean, like those people are not thinking for themselves anything at all whatsoever. Like,
yeah,
they can't even question the system there and what it is for or anything. At
right.
least a group has some objectives which are clear to everyone. You know,
Yeah,
here the objectives are not clear to anyone in this big cult called, which is what they call
right.
society or the system. The aims and objectives are not even known.
No,
Like, what are the aims and objectives of this whole exercise?
right.
you
It's
know,
just like chasing empty desires. It's like what they
yeah,
go towards. It's like,
yeah, yeah. But they can't give a actual that thing that these are our objectives.
right.
This is where we are going together. Like,
Yeah,
they don't have any such thing. You know.
right,
So whatever they have been doing from their side, like they have been like this mind programming happening all the time through programs and TV and media, and which has happened for so long, last 60, 70 years. First it happened through radio, then through television, now through
right.
internet, whatever, you know.
Yeah,
And if you're mind programming and then someone washes that mind through some culture, they call it brainwashing. I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, because your brain does need washing because it is full of all this nonsense, incoherent nonsense and garbage which has been put in it.
uh-huh. So true.
Yeah, from that thing, media and everything.
Right.
So, like, I mean, everything which is good is labeled as bad. Like it's a classic case of the hero and villain sort of opposition thing, where
Right.
you know you would say good side is the bad side, like you know
Yeah.
the culture side is the bad side. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. That.
yeah, but they can't come and out and openly say culture is bad, right?
Right.
No one, because nobody they can't come out and say culture is bad. So let's cut the word culture into word cult, and then that people will consider bad because that is not politically correct. You know,
Right.
because this culture, that tribal culture, that Portuguese culture, you can't say anything against culture.
Right.
You know, so the only thing they're left with is the word cult, like to create fear about. You know,
Right.
when it's actually just culture. If anything is coming from anything, it's coming from some culture, which is actual culture, which helps human beings evolve out here on earth, makes them live a life which is good for themselves and their body, mind, and spirit. Right?
Yeah.
Right. What else? Like, I mean, you know, yeah,
Yeah. When one thinks of culture, I mean, I think of you know just indigenous nations around the world, which each one has their own inherent connection to the earth, and like I feel like that is something that's emphasized.
even from that thing, if some good things from that practical things come into and are applied, it will be called a cult, according to them. Like everything which is not mainstream, which doesn't make you toe the line or be part of the system. Like that way, like, science is a big cult. Like, you
Yeah.
know, because they say cult is based on believing. In
Right.
science, everything is based on believing. You have to believe everything, as a scientist tell you.
Right.
Okay. You have no proof.
Uh-huh.
You will never be shown any proof,
Right.
but you just have got to believe it. That sun is that hot or that far away.
Right. The consensus reality. I mean, you know that it's something. If the things that you're not allowed to question seems
Yeah.
like the things that they're pressing hardest to keep
Yeah.
framework around what the reality they are proposing on us is.
Yes. Yes. So that is, and then they will say this is the basic foundation of a cult.
Right.
That's what cult is supposed to do. But they are doing it the most, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the culture, like things can be based on practical experience at least. You eat a certain kind of food and you feel better. changing your diet, right? Like there is some
right,
practical blessing which you can experience yourself. You know,
right,
in their case, nothing is based on your experience at all. You can't experience anything.
right,
You know, they're just saying we are going to moon, Mars, or whatever. You can't experience it. So there's much more belief involved, you can say,
mhm,
and without any actual purpose,
right,
without any goal.
yeah,
There's no goal for any human being or a being who is part of that big cult called society.
right,
There is no exact, like, are you evolving that human being? What are you doing exactly? What is all this for? Like,
right.
why are they doing this 9 to 5 jobs? And what are they gaining from it?
Yeah,
You know,
at least one very empty and just
yeah, yeah,
so
okay,
lost or something, right?
yeah. But because they don't go specified, and what they call as cult still have to specify something,
Yeah,
some upliftment they have to
right,
specify. You know, but I'm not saying that there are not a lot of groups which are not crazy. Like, there can be a lot of groups which are crazy. I'm
right,
not defending them here in any way, shape, or
right,
form.
yeah,
But I'm just saying that for the mainstream to say anything against anything, that's a big joke.
right,
Yeah, for them to point fingers and create this fear, and that's what like, and the beings who believe in the mainstream, they are the ones who like to use the word cult
yeah,
for
exactly,
anything which they don't understand, or anything which is outside of their like local scope
yeah,
of where they live and what the system values are there. Like
right.
so,
Yeah, I mean, if
yeah,
they could really see it for how it is, I mean, all the leaders and people that they, you know, trust or believe in so deeply, if they could see it as it was, like they would be in straitjackets, you know, like,
yeah. What we find out, there is a very big cult out here which is hiding culture from people.
yeah, yeah,
That's
so
that's
true.
the actual situation. It's very simple. Like
Yes,
you know,
hiding culture. That is such a good,
from people in the name of the term called cult.
yeah.
So as long as you keep pointing fingers at the small group, you think those fingers will never come back at you. And especially in America, this word is even more,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
compared to other countries. You know, it is more popular. It seems to be.
Oh
You know,
definitely. It's
yeah,
certainly a trigger or a word with a lot of weight that you
yeah,
know if you hear it,
yeah, yeah,
it sparks something in the
yeah.
conversation. It's just like
Yes, yes, yes. It's
and that,
a more loaded word because programming has worked maybe stronger out there. Like, they seem to be very concerned about culture entering that particular landmass on Earth. Like you know,
yeah,
so
definitely. Well, because they've done so much work to eradicate any culture of the indigenous nations here,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah. So like it's a war against culture basically.
very much.
Like, but under the name cult, like that is the trigger term word for
Yeah.
it. You know, and things like natural things like leadership, which is a natural thing,
Hmm.
groups work in a group way, like and all of that, like whatever comes with that, you need association, you need coordination, you need all of these things for groups to work,
Right.
which which they call as all negative things. These are negative qualities of a cult, like same things are propagated, like but in a company, if it's done that in a multinational company, then it's all good,
Right.
even though their goal might be to exploit people or just sell
Exactly.
Pepsi everywhere, or you know
Uh-huh.
like so it gets to that kind of level of absurdity,
Yeah.
you know yeah, where natural processes are shown as something like abnormal or illogical to the masses. And while most abnormal, illogical things which are going around in the name of the system, masses don't get to see, like, the
Right.
amount of lies in which the system is, an amount of nonsense and ridiculousness and absurdity which has been spread
Right.
in the name of education, in the name of science, in the name of religion, in the name of all these things. So banks are not cults, like none of these school systems are cults, you know,
Right.
like medical associations with their symbol and everything, caduceus and stuff. That's not a cult. Like,
Yeah. Right.
you know, you know,
Freemason societies, not at all.
no, 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 no. You know, all the religious structures, that all of that, that's all good and that's all okay.
It's accepted.
Yeah, except because we say so.
Right.
We decide
Yeah.
what is a cult and what is not. You know,
Yeah.
you know,
So,
and people who are gonna buy the mainstream narrative, they'll always fall for these kind of cliche words, terms. That's why I think in English people just get a lot of misunderstanding from terms which are thrown around.
right.
Like so many such terms are thrown around in English language,
Yeah, definitely.
and people just get lost in that illusion of that term. What's called Maya and Sanskrit and illusion in English, illusion of that term. Right?
Right.
So rather than trying to understand something basic and commonsensical and grounded about it, what is group work, what are groups, what do groups need to function, and that has been there in nature for millions of years as long as beings exist.
Yeah. Right.
you know, and to turn all of that into that negative thing has to be done for a purpose. Like
Yeah. I mean, if you just think about even different species, right? They have a particular colors that are like whatever, like a mating ritual or something. Like a bird,
yes,
a certain kind of dance. You know,
yes, yes,
they're gonna
yes,
show their colors with their feathers and all
yes,
kind of things. And
yes,
and that's natural. It's in nature.
yes. A lot of things which even group work which happens in animals, like they'll show it on Discovery Channel that these animals are working together in a group, but then that's okay.
Right.
But if humans start working together with each other in a group for a certain objective, that's not okay. That's a curse.
We got to stop this. Right. Yeah, totally. And then one thing
Right.
that
Yeah.
I appreciated hearing that you had mentioned it, it's like if there is actually a divinely oriented culture, then that's what
Yeah.
needs to be cultivated. Like that's
Yeah.
what the life needs to be breathed into
Yes.
for our well.
Yes. Yeah. And if beings start going towards some culture, which is actually cultured, more sensical, more logical, more practical, then what is the harm?
Yeah,
The harm is for only those who don't understand it, who don't get it, who are not ready to change themselves, and they're given all those people a tool to point fingers
yeah,
at anyone who's trying to do that. So that they will feel like, oh, all this pressure will come to me if I change even for the better.
right,
So it's to dissuade people from actually turning their life for the better,
right,
for the fear of uh, peer pressure.
right. Yeah, I mean they're targeting each individual's ego as the thing that keeps them held in
Yes,
what their idea of how they're supposed to be so that they won't venture off towards
yes,
something that's better for themselves.
yes, yes, peer pressure. Someone starts leaving alcohol or like cigarettes or things like that, or starts doing that, like then, oh, have you joined a cult or something?
Right. They're like,
Yeah,
what? Really? No?
yeah, yeah. So basically, any positive change towards the better is not looked upon well, and this kind of atmosphere has been created through these vague, stupid terms like cult, which by itself doesn't mean anything. That word,
Right.
it means nothing. Culture means something, but cult means nothing actually. It's a
Yeah.
created word, like popular was turned into pop,
Yeah.
pop culture, pop song, pop that thing. You
Right.
know, the ancient Vedic way of learning, of dissemination of knowledge, was guru to disciple by speech transmission. Okay, so if a guru and there are disciples who are learning that actual knowledge. So this sort of thing in today's paradigm, from today's this false paradigm, would be considered as a cult. Okay,
Right.
whereas 20 people learning from somebody.
Right.
Okay, even that is by this false context they've created this fake word is a basically a cult, right?
Right.
But if you go to their organizations or institutions like a school or a college, and they give you all kinds of misinformation there, okay, which you're not really learning anything, then that's not a cult.
Uh-huh.
But if some being who is knowledgeable about something and they're disseminating knowledge to disciples, on the basis of that, then that's a curse. I think the final result of that, all of this word or this thing, is to stop knowledge dissemination, actually, in the end.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like not anything can be disseminated to anyone until we say so, that this is okay. Okay. No knowledge
Absolutely.
can be, no knowledge can be passed on from one individual to another
Right.
until the say so of a certain context or certain construct they have
Right.
created. Dissemination of actual knowledge, which was the Vedic way, from knowledgeable person to others, and that too based on mutual respect and stuff, and the guru has a right to choose whom they teach to and all of that.
Right.
Now that will be considered a cult. So it's quite funny that they have basically tried to shut off that, and like which is like individual freedom to learn from where you want to learn, right?
Right.
Then human beings have to look into that and see for themselves what they want for themselves, whether they want to learn something for themselves, which is for their evolution, for their benefit, or not.
Right.
That. So if they're getting caught in this kind of nomenclature and everything, they are basically cutting off their own future development and evolution. Nothing else. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes really the development of the common sense, as you have spoken about even recently, to be able to to see these things too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because
So
they always talk about individual rights a whole lot in this world, like individual rights and people should have rights and all of that. Like, okay,
right.
but what about this right to learn from whom you choose, like, without being labeled as cult?
Yeah.
It is important I spoke about this because nobody else is speaking about this. I
Right.
think this might be the only talk
Yeah.
online about this topic right now in 2021, and still nobody has talked about this.
It's a
So,
pertinent point. But
yeah, let's hope people understand what I'm trying to say here.
yeah, our own well-being should not be set aside because it's not the standard of whatever society is wanting.
Yes,
That
yes,
well-being is the most important thing that we should be going
yes,
towards, no
yes,
matter what society is telling us.
yes, yes, obviously, yes, yes. And if for that, like if you take help of a group, that's a good thing,
Right.
you know, because a lot of times the individual cannot alone
Right.
deal with this big mass of society.
It's a big
So
pressure,
it's a big pressure.
and I really just want to acknowledge the way that you guide beings toward their own well-being. I have
Yes,
not found any other source doing that as thoroughly and as
yeah,
as harmoniously as you're doing it.
yeah,
Really
yeah.
appreciate it.
And whenever that happens, and different beings wake up and different beings start following the guidelines for their well-being, and then they start to form a group, and then a group is more powerful entity, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
which can help other beings, you know
Right.
what I'm saying, who are waking up, and so that's why this whole general fear of groups, you
Right.
know. Yeah.
And the idea of this Aquarian time, the groups are going to be coming together, um,
Yes. Yes.
a good common purpose, right?
Yes. And that Aquarian age means the age of group only. It's 11th sign, 11th house, 11th house is house of groups, 11th sign is sign of groups. Okay.
Yeah.
So that energy is coming, and it's happening right now, and that's exactly why this kind of roadblocks have been created already.
They knew it was
Because it's because like this is gonna happen.
coming.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so the
Yeah.
groups will rise anyway, and
Right.
you know, so like even online there are so many groups, you know, of different things on Facebook or different things. Groups are gonna pop up everywhere,
Yeah.
whether they like them or not,
Hmm.
or whether they want them or not, on every topic and everything. Groups are gonna form,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
and whatever groups are having more culture and something really happening, they'll try to label as cult.
Yeah. Find ways to dismiss them and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So like if it's just a car group, like where beings are interested in cars and then they talk about cars to each other and that kind of thing, automobile group, then that's fine.
Right.
That's not a cult, no,
Yeah.
because not that culture involved.
Just a hobby. It's a hobby.
Yeah, yeah. But soon groups of all kinds will arise. It will not just be automobile groups, and groups are of all types. And they can try their best, but the way the energy is going, it's gonna go like that only. And culture, like centered groups which care about individual well-being and how to evolve human beings, and that's what human beings are here to do, is evolve themselves. There's no other job and work of a human being.
Right.
So, and they will rise too, and labeling them as anything won't do the trick in future, at least for beings who have woken up. You know,
Right.
being and there are all being in the last 15, 20 years who have seen through the lies and the sham of the mainstream system and media and everything and system.
Yeah.
So, so there are a lot of people now who are disaffected with the mainstream.
Right.
Anyways, that number is huge. You
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Yeah. It's how you were
and
talking about. It's like two different groups are going to form. I guess the one that is has been happening for a while, they'll keep their thing, but then there's going to be a counter uh,
yeah,
group that has more of a realistic way of approaching things.
and that though that number is rising every day, like
Yeah.
so that's the way things are going. So this was just a step in to help those people who are already broken free to
Right.
not fall for this made up term.
I really appreciate your clarifying words on the topic. So,
Okay,
really grateful to you. Pete.
okay.